everybody. Thank you so much for the invitation. Thanks for attending. And thank you for the introduction. My name is Adriana Carias. I'm a landscape designer with Concui Design Initiative, or KDI, if it's easier for you to say that. A little bit about me. I'm an immigrant. I was born and raised in Honduras. For those of you that don't know, Honduras is one of those countries that would open up your eyes to the very raw reality most of our fellow humans live in. There's gender-based violence, years of corruption, climate-induced crisis, crime as an outgrowth of extreme poverty, among many other things. Growing up, I was lucky enough to grow up in a big, loving family. I attended private schools. I did not live in the safest neighborhood, but I had so many privileges. And in my head, for a long time, it wasn't up to me to change the world. I cared enough to feel good about myself, but not enough to actually do something about it. I went to architecture school. I've always liked design and all the interpretations of design. For a long time, I really thought that design was a luxury, something that you could only think of when and if you had all the basics in life taken care of. And that was sort of my guide at the beginning of my professional career. Straight out of school, I worked at a design-build residential landscape firm in the Bay Area in California. During my time there, I was picking up that rich people indeed have rich people problems. I was also picking up on something else. For example, it didn't matter how many times I met with my client to pick a pool tile. It wasn't really the tile, the one that had impact on my client. It was sort of the position of the pool and the furniture around the pool, the orientation of everything to maximize the space. All these design moves had a great impact in the user. So that's when a light bulb turned on for me. Design has power, and good design can be transformative. I looked for ways in which design could be accessible to those who need it most. And with a mix of fear, excitement, and a lot of hope, I left my firm, my residential landscape firm, and that's when I found KDI. The work that we do sits at the intersection of design and social justice. We try to build more equitable communities around the world and here in the US. We work with disinvested places around the world, and we collaborate with low-income communities of color that have been excluded from the traditional planning and design practices. We are a team of landscape architects, urban planners, fabricators, community organizers, and architects. Our office started more than 10 years ago as the outgrowth of a design school thesis by these guys right here. It began in Kenya, and it subsequently moved to the United States a few years after that. We have offices in Los Angeles, in Coachella, which is about 2.5-hour drive east of LA. We have offices in Stockholm and in Nairobi, Kenya. Our goal as an office is to flip the script of the traditional designer-client relationship by introducing new voices into the design process. That way we create an end product designed by multiple authors that are all acting within the same landscape. Our model is unique, but it's still kind of novel in the design profession. We ask, listen, collaborate, and repeat. Our name, Concui, for those who have a big question about that name, it's a word that our Thai co-founder thought perfectly captured our approach to design. That knowing a place and community intimately is the most important step into the design and planning process. So we basically do 4 things, the ones you see right here. We believe in power of public space to create healthy, vibrant, and prosperous communities. We believe community-led planning is key to sustainable and equitable change. We believe in co-producing knowledge to catalyze social change. And we believe community voices are crucial to advancing equity. Like I mentioned earlier, we have offices and projects on 2 sides of the world. Today, I mainly want to talk about 2 places in particular. Nairobi, Kenya, and Coachella in California. At first glance, you might think that these 2 places are worlds apart. And while they are physically, in many other ways, they have more similar things than you may imagine. Kibera is the largest informal settlement in Kenya. It's roughly the size of Central Park in New York City. It's home to about 300 to 500,000 people, depending on whose numbers you're using. When those students that I mentioned earlier, the later co-founders of KDI, first visited Kibera, this is what they observed as they were walking towards the little town. So they saw leafy streets and narrow gates of high-view states, lush lawns and high walls of Royal Nairobi Golf Course. But it didn't take long before they saw this. What was shocking to them, it wasn't the trash or the black water. It was the proximity of that trash to the wall, to the golf course, that kind of stayed with them. It is approximately a 5-minute drive from Palm Springs to the eastern Coachella Valley. In Palm Springs, you see miles of stucco walls and what seems like enough golf courses for every resident to have their own. But then you cross Monroe Street, and immediately the tall stucco walls gave away to wide open fields dotted with communities like this, with names like St. Anthony Trailer Park, which is the patron of lost things. So there's 2 different places in context, yet precisely the same stories, the same feelings and questions. How did this happen? And can design do anything about it? So to the first question, how, the answer is distinct for each of these 2 places, but at the same time is eerily similar. Kibera's origin is one of the legacy of colonialism, rampant corruption, and government failure. Kibera has never had any long-lasting investment in development or urban planning. So what is it like to live in Kibera? Few paved roads exist in Kibera, with a network of informal pathways serving as the main way to get around. In Kibera, water is controlled by cartels, and is expensive, unregulated, and often unclean. Formal sanitation systems are largely non-existent, relying mostly on unimproved latrines and flying toilets. Human waste in plastic bags are chucked into the streets and rivers. Open spaces to gather and play are very limited, and the streets and alleys can be very dangerous, especially at night for young people and women. Income is derived from low-paying jobs in the city and from informal businesses in Kibera. A large proportion of the population is unemployed, especially youth. But despite all these challenges, and perhaps because of these challenges, Kibera residents are resilient. They're entrepreneurial, and they have really strong community networks with high levels of participation. The Coachella Valley, which extends about 45 miles north-south, is one of the most productive agricultural regions in the state, if not the country. It could be hard to believe that a place that holds an event like this has similar conditions as the ones in Kibera. And just a very, very few people know about the history of this place or even the impact that that event has on the residents. In California's Coachella Valley, colonialism is replaced with discrimination in the form of structural racism against immigrants and Native Americans. Plus, complicated and some might say corrupt water rights. The things that KDI learned about Coachella sounded like Kibera. Unpaved roads, drinking water from wells tainted with arsenic, sanitation systems consisting of sewage ponds. It kind of sounds a little bit too harsh for California. Well, there are paved roads in the ECV, as we call it, but there is virtually no pedestrian or bicycle infrastructure. Collisions with pedestrians and bicyclists happen at a very high rate, even considering that a lot of these accidents go unreported because of fear of immigration authorities. The Eastern Coachella Valley lacks complete water infrastructure. So many places rely on wells. Many people cannot drink water from their taps, and they're forced to purchase water. Sanitation varies across the valley, with some people connected to formal sewers. However, many people that live in the approximately 140 trailer parks use less formal systems like sewage ponds, or sometimes directly connecting their toilets to a pit below their trailers. While there is an abundance of unused land in the ECV, it too lacks formal public spaces, forcing people to play and gather in dusty vacant lots without any shelter from the 100+ degree weather that it's a norm in the area. Income is also derived from minimum wage jobs that are sometimes dangerous and they're not well regulated. For example, agricultural field work. Here, also, a large proportion of the population is unemployed, with about over 40% of households living under the poverty level. As in Kibera, the Eastern Coachella Valley is a tightly knit community, full of vibrant culture and art that the residents are really proud of. Self-formed advocacy groups are not hard to come by here. So what to do? At KDI, we usually say that we're designing a process, not a product. So if that was true, we could take that process of asking, listening, collaborating, and repeating, and apply it in Kibera, in the ECV, and then have long-lasting positive change. So for a moment, we're going to travel back to Kibera, and I'm going to walk you through KDI's first project there, and how it exemplifies the roots of KDI, and basically how we work till this day. Basically, all design projects start with a site, right? Well, there was no such luxury in this project. In Kibera, the government owns the land, and residents are tenants that rent structures from middle-class Kenyans that received a quasi-legal agreement to squat the land. Plus, the place is so dense that every square meter that you could build on has been built on. So who was the best equipped to negotiate land acquisition between the government and the cartels? Residents helped identify riverine waste spaces across the settlement that flooded regularly and had been left abandoned to weeds and trash and gangs. But not only were these the only spaces available for the team to use, they also turned out to be a perfect opportunity to create widespread, comprehensive change in the settlement. In other words, it was the residents, not the team, who located the perfect, most strategic sites for all of our projects. But once the site was identified, what were they going to build on it? So remember all that asking and listening I mentioned? So what came out of it was that the residents' needs were kind of complex. So on top of all those access, water, and sanitation problems, women felt unable to participate in community decisions. In other words, the needs of the community were physical, yes, but they were also social and economic. And immediately became clear that a single structure like a toilet or a school was just not going to cut it. So what's more, residents mentioned that no matter what got built, if it didn't have a way of paying for itself, the team shouldn't even bother. Because the idea of government maintenance was a dream. And with no disposable income of their own, nobody was going to be able to provide the financial means to maintain the facility. So it would either end up relying forever on donor funding or just being completely abandoned. The team was going to have to expand their scope. A team of landscape architects, urban planners, engineers, with residents at the center could work holistically and really start to build an equitable place to live. And this has become the standard way of doing business. KDI is participatory and interdisciplinary in everything that we do. And it's not just like a interesting way to stand out among the competition. It is the only way we know how to truly design and work in the places that we work. So what about that project? Well, in the end, the team settled on a public space, but not just any public space, a productive public space. Essentially a harder working park that not just provided recreation space, but also essential services like water, sanitation, flood protection, and income generating programs to sustain the space and bring income to the community. For example, food and craft collectives, urban agriculture, compost sales, brick making, savings and loan programs. So after a long time listening and through this whole participatory process, where decision making was truly shared between the team and the residents, the team was able to turn this site into this. So what happens after you build something like this? We found that the impact ripples throughout the community. People use the new project and they start talking about it to their friends. And the site becomes a local landmark and a wayfinding device in a place where street names are non-existent. The site was named or nicknamed Bricks, and it was because of the innovative soil bricks that the residents made to construct the building. And next thing you know, everybody wants their own bricks in their little corner of Quibera. And so Site 1 became Site 2, and then 2 became 5, and then we're currently working on Sites 10 and 11. Now we're going to move across the globe back to California, when we find another example of a project done a little bit differently too. Oasis is one of the communities in the East Valley. It's very different from any community in the valley. The irony of the name is not lost on us. In the West Valley, you see trails and bikeways like these. The whole area is geared towards recreation. But in the East, you have to drive 20 minutes to reach a park, and the idea of getting there through a bike trail or a sidewalk, it's kind of a dream. It might not sound so difficult, but just imagine gathering all your kids, the grandparents, and drive an hour each time you have to get some energy out. So we're building a park in the community, in the center of the community, the first park for Oasis. And rather than building a typical Coachella Valley park like this one, we took a step back to learn more about the community, their needs and their vision, so we could design something culturally and contextually unique. But this is a demographic that is sort of complicated to understand because there's not much data out there. And it was a little complicated to engage as well because people don't just take the time between multiple jobs to show up to an event just because they saw a flyer. So our design process started by doing our own research and asking a group of local youth, who we call the street team, to help us design and lead the process. They were really creative and came up with the idea to transform this agricultural shade trailer, something that is used in the agricultural fields across the valley, into a mobile research beacon. With this strategy, we were able to meet residents at times and places that worked for them. at the food dispensary, at ESL classes, or in the fields where they work. Many of the same residents that were with us during the planning process moved with us into the design phase to imagine a park that reflects their culture, their community, and their identity. So in workshops like these, we collectively decided what should be in the park, where things should be located, how to spend the budget, and even what things should look like. For example, in designing our playground, we asked the children in the community to explore the animal kingdom of Coachella through drawings. So they drew their favorite animals, and these now are going to be reflected on the climbing structures in the playground. We're also working with a local resident and Purepecha textile artist to literally weave into the screens of our community building narratives that reflect the community's history of agriculture, migration, and solidarity. And through this process, we are on our way to build a park that looks like this. We actually inaugurated phase 1 of this project last year, which includes the soccer field on the right and a play area. This is another one of our PPS projects in Coachella, the unincorporated community of North Shore. So it's just a few minutes from the Salton Sea. If you don't know what the Salton Sea is, many Californians don't know about it either. I encourage you to research about it, but that's a lecture of its own. Similarly to Oasis, we conducted a community-led design process that culminated in North Shore's first park. We have a community building that hosts the local bike repair business. We have an event pavilion. We have a skate park, a playground, and many more amenities. Like in Quibera, the residents of each site are already connecting and forming a wider network of capable, committed change makers, anchored by the physical changes happening in their communities. They are finding a stronger, more cohesive voice in the face of challenges such as economic and environmental injustices. So there you have it. Two worlds with many things in common. All these things come together to convince you that design is not and it should not be just for the privileged. It is a powerful tool to advance equity in all parts of the world. But it's not enough to come in fancy degree in hand and think that we can change the world through design. We have to listen to the community. And listening to them is not just a nice thing to do, it's just so we can pat ourselves in the back afterwards. It is a strategic, imperative process. We need to listen. Community members know more about certain things than we do. They're experts. They know what the problems are, the ones that they face. They know how these problems accumulate. They know how to implement social and economic strategies so it supports infrastructural change. They know who to talk to. They know how to get things done. Community members are as much experts as we are. And they come from all backgrounds with all types of knowledge. So if you want to change the world, or maybe just your block, I invite you to follow a simple process. Wherever you work, whoever you work with, ask, listen, collaborate, and repeat. It will take you to places you didn't think you would go, and it will lead you to solutions you didn't think you needed. Thank you.